You know, our cities are changing at this incredible pace, transforming right in front of us. But here's the question. Are we just building them bigger, or are we actually building them better? So today, we're going to dig into how we can rebuild our urban centers to be smarter, greener, and ultimately a whole lot wiser for the future. Okay, let's get into it.
To really get why this is so urgent, let's just start with one number. And trust me, it's a big one. By 2030, India's urban population is projected to hit 600 million people. To put that in perspective, that's almost double the entire population of the United States, all living in cities. We're not just talking about growth here. This is a massive, monumental shift that's putting unbelievable pressure on everything. And here's the kicker. All of this massive expansion is happening at the exact same moment that our cities are finding themselves on the front lines of a brand new global crisis. The climate crisis isn't some far-off threat anymore. For people living in cities, it's a daily reality. And it means our cities have to evolve, or, well, they'll face some serious consequences.
So what does this crisis actually look like on the ground? Well, it looks like brutal heat waves that are made even worse by all the concrete and asphalt. It's flash floods that completely overwhelm our old drainage systems. It's the constant stress of not knowing if there's enough water, and the very real health problems that come from breathing polluted air day in and day out. These aren't just bullet points on a slide. They affect millions of lives and are pushing our cities to their breaking point.
All right, so how do we even begin to respond to all that? This is where the whole idea of the smart city steps in. But let's be super clear about this. We're not talking about flying cars and sci-fi gadgets. It's really a practical, totally necessary response to these urgent challenges. It's about using technology and data to build cities that can actually stand up to these pressures. At its heart, the whole point of a smart city is to build what's called climate resilience. But what does that word even mean? It's not just about surviving a disaster. It's about being able to see threats coming, to absorb the shock when they hit, to adapt to whatever the new normal is, and to get back on your feet quickly, all without giving up on future growth. It's about creating cities that can bend but not break. So how do you actually build one? Well, it really comes down to three key things. First off, you've got to have the basics down. Solid, reliable infrastructure. The lights have to turn on, the water has to run. Then, that foundation has to support a sustainable and healthy environment. And finally, the magic ingredient. You weave smart, data-driven solutions into the very fabric of the city to make everything run better. The thing is, none of these work alone. It's how they all fit together that makes a city truly smart.
Okay, so that's the theory. But what does it actually look like in the real world? Well, cities all over the globe are on this same journey, but they're taking completely different paths to get there. Let's take a look at a few fascinating examples to see these ideas in action.
And this right here really nails the different mindsets. In developing nations like India, the focus is often laser sharp, right on solving urgent, immediate problems with technology. But when you look at global leaders like Singapore or Copenhagen, you see these huge, long-term integrated plans where technology is just baked into their entire national strategy. It shows you that context is absolutely everything.
So let's take India for a second. In Pune, there's this amazing cooperative of waste pickers called Swatch. They're using a decentralized system to keep 220 tons of waste out of landfills every single day. Or look at Surat, a city that's always at risk of floods. They've built a smart flood forecasting system for real-time alerts. They're also using smart water meters to find leaks and deal with water shortages. These are super practical, life-saving innovations.
All right, now let's hop over to Singapore, which, is kind of the gold standard for this stuff. Here, green infrastructure isn't just a nice add-on, it is literally woven into the dense city landscape. From the world-famous super trees at Gardens by the Bay to the beautiful green terraces built right into public housing, nature is a core part of the city's design and its strategy for survival.
Water. This is a perfect way to see the difference in scale. Singapore, which faces a huge water shortage, created this incredible thing called the Knee Water Initiative. It's a national system that recycles wastewater to meet up to 40% of the whole country's needs. Now compare that to the smart meters in India, which are focused on the super important but much more local issues of finding leaks and managing water use house by house. Both are smart, just tailored for very different situations.
And then you've got a place like Copenhagen, which has this amazing citizen-focused model. They didn't just have experts design their big climate solutions, they actually co-created them with the residents. They use solutions found in nature, like parks that can double as flood basins. And because they involved the community from the very beginning, they create solutions that not only work, but that people actually love and feel a part of.
Okay, so after looking at all these different places, what's the takeaway? Well, if you pull all these lessons together, you can actually build a kind of practical toolkit, a list of the key ingredients that any city anywhere can use to start building a more resilient future.
What we end up with is basically a roadmap. You have to start by knowing your specific risks. What are you up against? Then you build smarter infrastructure and get green projects going. You bring in technology to help you make better decisions, but, and this part is absolutely critical, you have to get the community involved every step of the way. And finally, you need strong governance to make sure the rules are clear and that you're actually making progress. So that technology integration step sounds a little abstract, right? Let me give you a really concrete example. Picture tiny little sensors, IoT sensors, inside a city's water pipes. The second a leak starts, they detect the change in pressure and boom, an alert goes straight to a city manager's phone. They could even be set up to automatically shut a valve to stop the waste. That's not science fiction, that's smart tech in action.
And what about sustainable infrastructure? Well, take a look at this. This is Singapore's Gwoko Tower. It's a green mark platinum building, which is just a fancy way of saying it has to meet crazy high standards for saving energy and water. It's policies like these green building codes that make sure that when our cities grow, they're growing in the right direction.
But Singapore, they're not just stopping there. Oh no. Their Green Building Master Plan has this wildly ambitious goal for 2030. They call it 80-80-80. They want 80% of their buildings to be green, they want 80% of all new buildings to be super low energy, and they want an 80% improvement in energy efficiency across the board. I mean, that is a bold, bold vision for a truly green city.
So the vision is awesome. The toolkit makes a ton of sense. But let's be real. The road to building these truly smart, resilient cities is definitely not a simple one. There are some major challenges on the horizon that we absolutely have to face.
So what are we up against? Well, first you've got city departments that don't talk to each other. Then there's the massive challenge of finding the money for these huge long-term projects. There's also this big problem of getting stuck in the pilot project phase instead of making real citywide change. And maybe most importantly, we have to figure out how to protect people's data privacy and make sure these smart systems work for everyone, not just the wealthy or tech-savvy.
And this quote, man, it just hits the nail on the head. Maybe the biggest challenge of all is just a shift in mindset. For way too long, resilience has been treated like an optional extra, a nice little add-on. The huge shift we need is to make it a core part of the plan, to bake it right into the foundation of how we design, build, and run our cities from day one.
And that really brings us to the big final question here. We have the tech, we have the knowledge, we can make our cities smarter. The sensors, the data, the green designs, it's all possible. But the real question we have to ask ourselves is this. As our cities get smarter, are we also building them to be wise? Are we creating places that aren't just efficient, but are also fair and livable and truly sustainable for the generations that are going to come after us? Now that is the ultimate challenge.